Welcome to I Start First podcast for boss babes who start dreams, ideas, lifestyle. Today, we're going to talk about my favorite F word. Yep, you guessed it correctly. It's fear. And the one thing you need to do to get yourself through that. Hi, loves. Welcome to I Start First podcast, the show for boss babes who start ideas, businesses, dreams, and lifestyle. I'm your host, Alenka Cullinan, founder of I Start First, speaker, author, and business coach, aka Queen of Pushing Boss Babes Off the Ledge. On this show, I chat with epic humans who are guaranteed to uplevel your business and mindset. Are you ready to sparkle up? Let's go. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to I Start First podcast, the episode where we are going to talk about my favorite F word. And my favorite F word is fear. You know, as women, I think we're especially prone not to do things because we're scared. And we are scared because we're afraid to be judged. We're scared because we're afraid that somebody is going to say something. We're afraid that we don't have the authority to do it because maybe we don't have enough knowledge. So it's that imposter syndrome. A lot of times we feel like, who am I, right? Who am I to go educate you or someone else? And, when I started this journey in entrepreneurship, I remember distinctly looking at my mom and thinking that she was fearless. If you know my story at all, my mom was a diehard entrepreneur. She built the company from ground up, and I've watched her do it for 37 years. So for 37 years, she would go out on a limb and make things happen. And, I remember distinctly watching her thinking, that is incredible. How could one person have no fear? And I remember asking her about that, and when I was 14, she actually gave me a postcard and said, the postcard was in English. It was my first postcard in English that said, always play by your own rules. And I was really, I loved it, but I was a little bit perplexed. And I said, do you want me to break the rules? And my mom laughed and she said, no, I just want you to make your own rules. And I said, well, aren't you afraid that your rules are wrong? And she said, yeah, you get to find that out in the process. And, we talked a lot since about fear. And she always told me that fear will never really go away, but you need to teach yourself and teach your brain that it's just your protective mechanism. It's nothing more than a protective mechanism. And in the process of going through that, you actually grow through things, you get better. So fear is just your body's way of trying to keep you in a comfort zone. And I can tell you right now, she was 100% right? My mama told me so. She was absolutely right saying that fear doesn't go away, because I thought, speaking at my first speech a long time ago, about 10 years ago at this point, that wow, there'll be a day when I'm never going to be afraid to go on stage. Well, I haven't found that day yet. I remember clearly doing my first TEDx talk, and freaking out because it was about 10,000 people in the room, cameras everywhere, the floodlights are in your face. You don't really see anything. You don't see the audience. Cameras are following you and everything is live, and it was Google translated. So I thought, wow, what if something does go wrong? Well, if something does go wrong, which in my case at that first TEDx talk, it actually did. I had a very funny line about my daughter saying that she was a Batman and she could be a Batman even as a girl. And when I said it, the second I said it, the balloon behind me on stage popped. And like 100 thoughts exploded in my head at that time because my first thought was, oh shit. My second thought was, I really want to swear, but I can't because it's TEDx talk and they will never publish that. My next thought was, what do I do because the audience is laughing? My next thought was, don't laugh because if you start laughing with them, they'll laugh even more. So, like, all of that exploded in my mind at that point, 3 seconds. And what I did, I just smiled, repeated the line, and kept going. So most people who watch that TEDx talk, and unfortunately they cut it in the YouTube version that's published, but most people who watched that raw version of it actually thought that the balloon that popped behind me was staged. That's how good I faked it. So, that expression, fake it till you make it, actually came in very handy that day. So what I want you to realize is that you need to learn how to do things with fear in you, because that fear will be with you for a long time, probably for most of your life. And you can be afraid, but do it anyways. You can be anxious and do it anyways. That's really what separates the beginners or the good from great. And that honestly is no difference between you and I doing things. I am just used to having that fear sitting in my, stomach, in my gut area, in my solar plexus, whatever you want to call it. But your heart, your breathing, however your body reacts to that fear, I am used to that. And that's just another symptom for me of growth. I literally look at fear now as a symptom of growth. I go through things. I move to the next level of video game called life with those symptoms around me and do it anyways. Because I'm telling you right now, am I super ridiculously comfortable recording this podcast? Absolutely not. You better believe that I'm not. I've been sitting in it for 6 months actually. And yet I've been speaking to audiences all around the country and around the world. I've been speaking on stages from 20 people to thousands and thousands of people over, my all kinds of audiences all across the board, and that doesn't faze me. And yet I'm sitting here in front of a mic, in front of my computer, and that feels uncomfortable. Crazy, right? But that's what I'm saying to you. That fear, there's always going to be a new scenario that is going to give you that uncomfortable feeling. And your goal is to get your mental state. This is where your mindset plays such a huge part. Your goal is to get that mental state to the point where you just don't care. You can be angry and afraid and do it anyways. You can be anxious and afraid and do it anyways. You can be annoyed and afraid and do it anyways. And I know you've had moments in your life where you've been annoyed at yourself and you're like, but why? I've done it, 10, 100, whatever, however many times. Why am I still afraid? You are, because you have that mental perseverance or mental preservation mode in your brain. And that's how your brain is trying to keep you in a safe zone or in a comfort zone. It's like a baby blanket that you keep dragging around, or some little kids have toys and some adults have the little plush toys that we still carry around. It's that comfort, right? So fear is nothing else than your body's reaction to the comfort zone that you're used to being in. And in order to step over that, you have to experience that fear. It's basically an indicator. Ding ding, it's telling you, hey, you're going to the next level. Hey, you're about to step into something that you've never done before. You're about to step into something that you're not super familiar with. To me, fear is also an indicator sometimes that you need to elevate your skills in something, right? So obviously my fear level now that I've done, probably tens of thousands of speeches is nothing like my fear used to be when I did 3 speeches. So now when I'm afraid, and I'm comfortable to go on stage and it's a really big arena or a really large room of people, I'm like, okay, it's fine. I know that the second I step onto that stage, I get so excited because I love the audiences and I love the, companies and the groups and organizations I love to speak in front of. I know for a fact the second I'm on the stage, boom, baby, game is on, like the whole different personality comes out and I don't even care anymore. So in In my program, in this I Start First boot camps, I specifically teach that, and I teach that notion with my clients as well. I teach the notion of 90 seconds of courage, because it's psychologically proven that actually it takes about 90 seconds for you to live through that first kind of freak out moment in your brain. And once you step over that first 90 seconds, everything subsides. And it comes from an experiment that they actually ran with people who skydive. And I don't know how many of you skydived. I've never actually skydived live. I have friends who did. But what they did is they put monitors on skydivers, and right before they jumped out of the plane, they saw all the monitors kind of go haywire. The blood pressure was going up, their heart rate was increasing, everything was acting as if they're diving. But in fact, the skydiver was still in the plane, completely safe and sound, and absolutely could have walked away and said, I'm not going to dive. But once they stepped out of the plane into the open air, right at that moment where you're like, okay, I hope the parachute works and this is all going to happen, at that moment when they stepped out, all the monitors went back to normal. All their vitals went back to normal. And the reason it's happening is because it only takes your brain about 90 seconds of that full on freak out moment to then come back and say, okay, everything is under control. Obviously, this is not death. You're not going anywhere. Everything is fine. And you are working through things. So whatever you're doing, if it's that sales call that you're horrified to pick up that phone, I encourage you to literally put your phone timer on 90 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it is, and make that call and literally watch your symptoms, like observe yourself. Because the minute you actually jump on, yes, you're still nervous, but you're already doing that anyways. If it's something where you need to go and meet somebody, same thing. Get out of your car, give yourself a pep talk, blast that music that gives you all pumped up and excited. We all have those songs or those podcasts. Maybe it's my podcast. I'd be honored if it's me who is pumping you up. But do whatever you need to do for those 90 seconds to overcome that first initial, like, I'm not going to do this, and do it anyways. And once you do that, once you experience 20, 40, 100, 1,000, 10,000 moments just like that, your fear is going to subside. The more you do it, the quicker you're going to overstep into that process of, I'm not afraid anymore. Or if I'm afraid, I don't even notice it. I don't even pay attention. I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in where I'm sitting there, right? And I'm sweating into my clothing. And then my heart rate is pumping, but I'm having that conversation anyways, because my position is that I am going to get an answer or do the thing I need to do. And if it doesn't work out, I'm going to experience that again. But guess what? I get to experience that with that much more experience that I had before. It's kind of like going from not knowing to knowing. I mean, think about it for a second. Now that I told you this 90-second rule or metric, you can never go back and say, Olinka, I don't know that anymore, because now you do. Now you can never go back to not knowing. So now you know that in order to get to the next level, whatever it is you want, whether it's next level in your career or next level in your business or next level in your personal life or your relationship or maybe self-love and self-care, all you have to do is experience that uncomfortable thing, that fear or anxiety or stress or anger, and do it anyways, right? And by doing that over and over and repeating it, it's just like training your muscle. Getting over fear is just like getting muscles in the gym. You see, I used to be a runner. I ran all through high school. I ran 400-meter track. I never really lifted weights until probably 6 years ago. And because of that, I learned that lifting weights is a whole different ballgame, and it still makes me uncomfortable, and I still do it anyways. But I also learned that if you trade that muscle on your arm or your abs or your legs over and over and over every single day, that muscle grows and it puts you through and it makes you better. And when you come back a week later, that doesn't feel the same way as it felt. It still may feel weak and not where you want it to be, but it most certainly doesn't feel the same as a week ago. So training you and your mind to get through fear, to get through situations that are uncomfortable is no different. Even if you're not where you are or where you want to be today, you're most certainly not where you were a week ago. You're most certainly not where you were a month ago. So recognize that in yourself. I wish that with your brain development and with stepping over situations like fear and anxiety, we could like physically open up our brains and show you, wow, like look at this progress that you've made. Look at all these new neurons that are firing. Look at all the incredible things that are happening and everything you're learning. But that's not how it works. We don't have a scan machine to show you that. So you just have to not, notice your progress and celebrate that, because you're clearly moving forward and you're clearly are not as afraid of things today as you were probably afraid a month ago. And if you are still afraid of those things today, then all you know is that what you need to do is go experience that. You see, unfortunately, you can't unteach yourself from fear by reading books. You can't get better with fear by watching YouTube videos. You can't even get better by listening to my podcast. Haha, joke. Or any podcast for that matter. The only way you can get through fear and get better with that is actually by physically doing the very thing that you're avoiding. So you see, I know deep inside of you, you all have something that you're avoiding doing right now. And unfortunately, to get to your biggest growth, to get to the next level, to get to your next biggest result, you need to get through that very thing. And the only way to do it is by acting. That's the reason I named my business I Start First. I didn't say I read first, I watch first, I wish first, I manifest first. It's actually I start first, because starting is doing. You really have to get that action going and start experiencing the things that you have been avoiding. And maybe you start at a very small scale and you tell yourself, you know what? My very first step is I'm going to make one call. Or maybe I'm going to record one video and maybe I won't even post it yet. But I'm just going to record it to watch me, because I promise you, watching yourself on video is pretty darn uncomfortable. And it's going to look all kinds of weird, all kinds of crazy, but you did it anyways. And maybe losing that pound of weight is you just getting your running shoes on and getting your gym clothes on and actually physically going in the gym. And you don't even work out. Maybe you just go in and look at people and look at all the machines and you tell yourself, you know what? I'm so proud of myself. I did it anyway. And you start with those small steps and you add one thing every single day, every single week. And before you know it, your fear level is going to elevate, just like your skill level is going to elevate, just like your mindset level is going to elevate. But you have to start doing. There is no other way to get over fear and to get to the next level but doing the actual action that you've been avoiding. So I love you all. Thank you for sticking with me through this. And even if you're afraid, I want you to go do it anyways. And like always, kick ass and sparkle. Thank you so much for listening to I Start First podcast. If you loved it as much as I did, feel free to tag us on Instagram at IStartFirst_. Share it with your besties. And if you feel so compelled, give us that 5-star review on iTunes. Till next time, and like always, kick ass and sparkle up.